Senator Wicker, first of all, thanks for providing us with this opportunity to interview you.
Glad to be here.
I know that it is not your first visit to Baku. What brings you to Baku and what do you want to accomplish here?
Well, what brings me here is the Parliamentary Assembly of the OSCE, the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. Our version of that in the United States is called the Helsinki Commission. It's some 57 European and Eurasian nations. And this year, the Parliamentary Assembly is meeting here in Baku. I was here last year as part of a delegation of senators and congressmen. We met with the Parliamentary Assembly in Istanbul and then came over for for most of us, our first visit to Baku last year. Let me also say, before you ask your next question, I think this is a great honor for Azerbaijan to host the Parliamentary Assembly. I know there are a lot of interesting things coming up, including the Games next year. But this is an opportunity to showcase to the rest of the world Baku and the beautiful city and the many things that are going on here, and also to demonstrate the difficulties that Azerbaijan has in the region. So it's a great opportunity to showcase the country and also to provide education to the rest of Europe.
I'm sure that you are aware people in this region are very much concerned about Russia's annexation of Crimea, Russia's actions in eastern Ukraine and also elsewhere in the region. Do you think is the United States doing enough to counter this pressure that we are all feeling, we are under?
Well, first of all, let me say that we are all concerned about this, and it's certainly understandable that people in this region would be concerned. Of course, Azerbaijan is in a very tough neighborhood with Russia to the north, Iran to the south, some disputed territories to the west. And so absolutely it's understandable that people in this region would be concerned. We will be bringing a resolution Tuesday to the Parliamentary Assembly, authored by Senator Ben Cardin of Maryland. It has a number of co-sponsors from all across Europe, and basically it states in very emphatic terms that the invasion of Ukraine, the annexation of Crimea, is a clear violation of the Helsinki principles. In my view, it is the most serious violation of our Helsinki principles, which formed the OSCE since the adoption of our final act in 1975. So I think this is a crisis for Europe. It's a crisis for the rule of law. It brings many questions into focus, including the territorial rights of sovereign nations, self-determination within borders. We view the so-called referendum in Crimea as a complete nullity because it was not done according to the Constitution of Ukraine. And so as a matter of fact, we view the actions of Russia with regard to Crimea and Ukraine as a violation of all 10 principles of the OSCE Final Act of 1975.
And how do you think, what are stakes for U.S. policy, for the United States and Russia's policy regarding Ukraine?
Well, the United States is very concerned about stability in Europe. That's the reason the United States signed the Helsinki Accords. It's the reason the United States has a presence in Europe, I think a very robust diplomatic presence within the continent. And so the stakes are very high. Of course, NATO is affected by anything that Russia would do to neighbors. And also, you know, when it comes to stability of our treaty allies in the OSCE and in Europe, when a nation starts talking about being able to use force in another sovereign nation because of ethnic Russians within those borders, it has a very familiar ring, actually, from the 1930s. We have multi-ethnic countries all over the world. As a matter of fact, most countries are multi-ethnic. And so it's completely unacceptable for Russia to say that they have a right to go into another nation and to violate those borders with force, with arms, under the guise of protecting ethnic Russians located in those borders. When does it stop, if that be the case? When does it stop? Does it stop in the Baltic countries because there are ethnic Russians all over there? So to me, we worry about the reassertiveness of Mr. Putin and his apparent willingness to push against the accepted norms of Europe and of the United Nations, as well as the Helsinki Charter.
In your previous statements, you called for closer partnership between the United States and Azerbaijan. How do you think, you even called Azerbaijan a critical ally in Washington Times. How do you think, is this partnership moving forward in light of events in Ukraine, and how supportive is Azerbaijan of U.S. interests?
I think our relationship is moving forward in a very positive direction. And yes, Azerbaijan has been supportive of U.S. interests, as the United States has been supportive of interest here in Baku. We very much appreciate the Western orientation of the leadership here in Azerbaijan. We appreciate the assistance that this country has given to our effort in Afghanistan. And also, I think it speaks volumes that Azerbaijan is a steadfast ally of Israel and very supportive of that country's right to exist in a very, very difficult region. I think people in Jerusalem and people in Baku have a lot in common in that respect. They know how difficult it is to exist in a very hostile environment.
And you have also called for additional steps to improve democratic reforms in this country. What steps did you refer to?
Well, there's no question about it that progress can be made. We were disappointed in some of the things that we heard about the last presidential election, and I think improvements can be made. That said, Azerbaijan is a very young republic, and thinking back on some of the early decades of my country with the Alien and Sedition Act and things that certainly don't stand up very well now in the light of the 21st century, my country had problems also in the early years. But I think the leadership here in this country is concerned about security in a tough region. But to me, rule of law, transparency of elections, and democracy promotion should not be mutually exclusive with security. I think we can have increased security and increased freedom of religion and rule of law at the same time. You know, friends should be able to speak honestly with each other. And I think that's been a hallmark of the 2 years of Ambassador Morningstar here during his term as ambassador in Baku. I think he's known President Aliyev for 2 decades almost. They know each other very well. They're longtime friends, and I think they speak honestly with each other. Last year, in June, when our delegation was here, or perhaps it was early July, we had a very, I think, open and full meeting with President Aliyev. Congressman Smith of New Jersey and I met with the President also a few days ago when we arrived, along with the ambassador. Again, I think we had a very productive conversation about expectations that each of our countries have, and I think we are moving forward as strategic partners and also making the case for openness and rule of law.
Head of an election watchdog, several journalists and bloggers are in jail now in Azerbaijan. Did you raise this issue of human rights, in your meeting with Ilham Aliyev?
It was a matter that was discussed, and our American State Department and our American delegation are hopeful that progress will be made.
Well, critics of U.S. policy said that this policy mainly focused on energy rather than democracy, human rights, good governance and corruption, fighting corruption in this country. How would you respond to this criticism?
Well, I would respond that I think our approach to Azerbaijan is multifaceted. And we do not emphasize one area or one subject matter of foreign policy over another. I think we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can talk about perhaps shortcomings among our allies and talk about mutual security and mutual interests at the same time. I do think also we have to take things in context. I thought, for example, that it was a mistake for the United States State Department to speak so glowingly of the Iranian election while making specific criticisms here in Baku that other countries around the region don't live up to also. We'd like for everyone to move forward in terms of free and open elections and the rule of law. And so it's a concern. We try to keep it in perspective, and we try to realize how fledgling democracies down through history have had to struggle with this.
So just for clarification, do you mean that the United States should close eyes to violations in elections for the sake of strategic partnership?
Not at all. As a matter of fact, the United States issued a position paper which I think was very explicit about shortcomings in the election. There's no question about it. And OSCE also sent in observers. And I think they were very forthright in mentioning a number of ways in which we were very unhappy with the way the election was conducted. My point is that it's wrong to single out one country in a neighborhood where there is a lot of room for improvement all the way around, and at the same time, we need to emphasize the positive aspects of the way Azerbaijan and the leadership has moved forward.
Well, going to my last questions, how do you think, how can the United States be more effective to counter Russian propaganda in former Soviet Union and Eastern Bloc?
Well, I think what we're doing today with this interview with Radio Liberty and Radio Free Europe and organizations like that, I think that's very important. Public diplomacy is still a very important part of foreign policy, and so we should continue to realize the importance of that. I've spoken out in the United States. I've contacted the Broadcasting Board of Governors to make it clear, my view, that a pivot away from Europe and Eurasia to the Pacific Rim is not perhaps advised at this point. And so I think continued public diplomacy through organizations such as this are very important.
How do you see the role of U.S. international media, including Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty, in countering Russian propaganda?
I think Russian propaganda is a very real threat. When a strong man takes over a country, where's the first place the troops go? They go to the radio and television towers. They take over the media. And so the entire United States effort, including Radio Free Europe, is very important in countering that. Information is power, and it's important that all sides of an argument are disseminated for the people to make their own decisions.
Did you want to add something that I didn't ask you?
No, thank you very much. I'm glad for the opportunity to speak to your viewers.
Thank you for providing us with this opportunity and also for your support for Radio Free Europe, Radio Liberty. Thank you very much.